so that we can start. Okay, so again, welcome back to everyone. This is now our Science B second session for the week. So, of course, before we start, just a gentle reminder, I think all of us here are already more or less aware and observant on this. Please take note of your microphone so that whenever you're asked by your teacher to participate during the discussion, it's easy for you to share your thoughts through the microphone. Of course, it's very important that you can hear clearly and understand clearly what the teacher is, of course, saying and trying to explain during our online class. And then lastly, of course, if it's possible and if your internet connection allows as much as possible, please turn on your camera, and especially if your teachers are asking you to um, turn on your camera, at least to verify your presence here inside our Google Meet. So for this session or for today, our session will be divided again into six components or six segments. We will first have our short review based on what we've discussed from session one, and then we will have the introduction of our topic for our session today, and then of course the presentation of our objectives, the our goals that we would like to achieve at the end of the session. And then, of course, we'll have the discussion proper. And hopefully, we have time to wrap up all our discussion for this afternoon. And then, of course, heads up in preparation for the upcoming sessions, session three and session four. So let's begin. For the first segment or first part of our session this afternoon, we'll have a very short review at the same time a motivation regarding our and review for our previous session regarding photosynthesis. So this is a very short sorting game. So let me first share my screen. Okay, here. So I have here the word wall. Okay. So what we will do is that in this activity, there are 10 statements. Okay. And each of these statements either belong to light independent or light dependent reaction. So if you remember, this is actually the different stages or reactions under photosynthesis. So we know light dependent as the first stage or the light reaction or light stage. And then we have the second stage called light independent reaction. Sometimes it's also called Calvin cycle or dark reaction. So anyone who would like to participate, all you need to do is choose a statement. You can actually describe the color of the statement, and then I will sort them under a specific reaction or stage. Okay, we have here one raising her hand. Okay, Miles, yes.
A triculture, also known as Calvin cyculture, is a light
This one.
independent.
Okay,
Yes,
this
sir.
one. Okay, thank you, Miles. Anybody else who wants to try? Simply raise your hand so that I can call your attention or recognize your name. Okay, aside from Miles. Yes, Gab. Okay, thank you.
Sure converts light energy into chemical energy.
This
Light
one.
independent. Highlight dependent.
This one. Okay, thank you, Gab. Okay, anybody else who wants to try? So we have still have 8 statements here. We have breaks down water, stored chemical energy, assembles glucose, occurs in the stroma, absorbs light during the process, assembles energy, release oxygen as waste product, and occurs in the thylakoid membrane. Can anybody else? Yes, Sophia?
Occurs in the stroma, light
Yes,
independent reactions.
light independent reactions. Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Aside from Miles and okay, let me call first Ira. Yes, Ira.
Occurs in the thylakoid membranes, light dependent.
Light dependent. Okay, thank you. How about okay, I think another person was raising his hand. Okay, Rupert. Yes, it was Rupert.
Assembles glucose like independent reactions.
Okay, this one. Thank you, Rupert. Okay, we still have five statements here. Anybody else who wants to try? Where do you think breaking down of water happens? Where is the absorption of light? When is oxygen released? How about when or it uses chemical energy to assemble glucose from carbon dioxide and assembles energy carrying molecules such as ATP and NADH. Okay, anyone? Okay, if we don't have volunteers, I will call from our list. Okay, is that fine? So, Miles, since you're the first person who answered a while ago, kindly choose a number between 1 to 10.
7 3.
Okay, 7 from the bottom. Let's start. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, let's have Pauline. Hello, Pauline. Are you still there? Okay, choose a statement, Pauline, and which reaction or stage does it belong to? Yes, which stage do you think this belongs? Okay, thank you, Pauline. Okay, before you go, Pauline, choose a number between 1 to 10. Okay, 3. So from Pauline, let's have 1, 2, 3. We have Isa. Okay, Isa, are you still there?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, you have here four statements, Isa. Choose one and then let's sort which stage does it belong.
Assembles energy carrying molecules such as ATP and
ATP,
NADPH
yes. Where do you think
light
this belongs?
in light dependent reactions.
Okay, light dependent. Okay, thank you, Isa. Okay, before you go, kindly choose a number between 1 to 10.
2, Chair.
Okay, 2. Okay, we have already Ira. I think Anne's already participated a while ago. So let's call the next person. We have Vaughn. Vaughn, are you
Contra.
still?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Breaks down water, sir. It's
Yes.
contra, light dependent.
Light dependent. Okay, thank you, Vaughn. Okay, before you go, Vaughn, choose a number between 1 to 10.
Contra 8.
8. See, let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So Russell already answered. So let's have Marinelle. Hello, Marinelle.
I'm not sure. Releases oxygen as waste products light dependent.
Light dependent. Okay. So say this one belongs here na lang. Okay. Let's check and let's submit our answer if all of these statements do really belong or have been sorted under the correct stage or reaction. Let's check. Okay, very good. All of the statements have been sorted under the correct stage or reaction. So let me show the answers so that you have time to, of course, if you want to take a picture or screen capture this summary of the statements as they have been sorted already under their correct stage or reaction. Okay, I'll give you some few seconds to screen capture the presentation on the screen. Okay, I think that's enough. So let's now go back to our presentation here. So thank you so much for those who participated during our review. So hopefully, based on the result, if it's just based on the result, more or less you're now um, familiar and aware in terms of the different characteristics between the two stages of photosynthesis. So here, another important thing that we need to remember based on our discussion from yesterday, that photosynthesis is a chemical reaction, and all chemical reactions are represented or are written as a form of chemical equation. So a chemical equation is divided into two sides. We have the reactant side, the input, the ingredients, and then the side after the arrow symbol is actually our product side or the substances that are made or generated from the process. So in this case, We have, of course, the solar energy as the initiator or activator of this process so that the process photosynthesis will take place. But this process is dependent on two important ingredients or reactants or input, as they are also called. We have the carbon dioxide gas and, of course, the water molecules. And then, of course, as this process um, undergo the different stages, it will produce glucose and then, of course, oxygen gas. So as I've said, the right side, the left side of the arrow or the left side of this presentation is the reactant or the are the reactants or the input, and we have here the product or the output. So please take note that oxygen is considered as the gas that is exhaled by the plant but inhaled by other living organisms such as animals and humans. And then, of course, glucose is the main product or the main component wherein it is the form of energy that is consumed by, or the a form of substance that is consumed by humans and animals alike so that it will provide them the necessary energy. Okay, so please take note of this chemical reaction. So, when humans eat, we get glucose and acquire energy stored from its structure. So how does the body do this? So how can we really trans get the necessary energy from the food that we eat? So take note, um, there are different forms of energy. Okay. However, our body is designed to recognize a very specific form of energy, and that is in the form of adenosine triphosphate. Okay. So, this is the form of energy that the body recognizes and the body can also use for its bodily functions. So, you might notice that our body is also very similar to machines. Naa siya mga parts, and all of these parts, they have their own specific functions. And just like a machine, it needs to be provided with the fuel or energies for it to function properly. However, unlike machines or other gadgets that we have at home, um, our body is not designed in such a way na if atong isyang i-plug sa outlet, we'll get the energy we need. So, kung imo nang buhaton, of course, you'll get electrocuted. And example, if you go to outside and you stay outside for a long period of time, you will not still get the necessary energy because it's not the form of energy that is recognized or yes, recognized by the body. So ATP is the specific form of energy that the body recognizes and uses for its bodily functions. So let's now explore how this process is done. So for our session this afternoon, we'll focus on the process called cellular respiration. So it is focused on breaking down of certain substances for for use. So this is found on our textbook page 225 to 100, sorry, 125 to 132. So please take note, these are the pages where you can find this particular topic. So for our objectives this afternoon, so we will focus now on how animals and plants harness energy or get energy. So let us say plants have already generated or manufactured their necessary food. They will now use it as a form of getting energy. So what are the raw materials and products needed and produced in from cellular respiration? And then lastly, what are the different features or characteristics that makes photosynthesis and cellular respiration different but also related to one another? So the primary question now is, what is cellular respiration? So we have already established that plants are autotrophs. They are self-feeders. They produce their own food. However, just like us, they need to process that food so that they will be able to convert that food which is in the form of glucose, as the um, correct format or correct um, structure that of or type of energy that the body will recognize. So humans, and like other heterotrophs, we need to process the food or the glucose small substances, and that is of course through the power of cellular respiration. So what happens in the cellular respiration is actually the breaking down or the process wherein glucose substance or substances, if you have more than one, are broken down into simplified form, and they are transformed this time to produce ATP. Again, ATP is very important because this is the form of energy that the body recognizes, and the correct format for the format or form of energy that the body uses or utilize. So for cellular respiration, there are actually two possible pathways. We have what we call as aerobic cellular respiration, aero, and then we have um, anaerobic cellular respiration. So what's the major difference between the two? Number one is that one, the aerobic respiration uses oxygen, while the other one does not use oxygen in the production of ATP. Now, aerobic respiration is our daily source of energy. Okay, this it takes a long period of time to generate ATP, but it is the most uh, uh, convenient way of getting energy without the side effects. Anaerobic cellular respiration is somewhat our emergency source of energy. It gives off or provides energy or generates energy in a short amount of time. However, there is a side effect. If you've noticed, if you are you suddenly change your activity or daily routine, suddenly you decided to do some exercise for that particular day, or you enrolled yourself in a gym, you will notice that the day after you had that extreme body activities, di ba magsakit in yung muscles? In our layman's term, we call it pamaol. The pamaol there is actually caused by the build-up of lactic acid on our muscles. Now, why is there lactic acid? It's because your body opt to use anaerobic cellular respiration. It's an emergency form of energy that will give you energy in a short amount of time, but not a side effect, as I've said. So that's why this is reserved as an emergency source of energy, especially for in the context of the human body. So we will focus our discussion today on the most common pathway, which is aerobic cellular respiration, which uses oxygen. So for aerobic cellular respiration, there are actually three main stages. We have glycolysis, Krebs cycle, or also known as citric acid cycle. And then lastly, we have electron transport chain, or ETC. So please take note that in this case, or in this particular process, our focus now for the organelle or cell part is now shifted from chloroplast. We're now focused on the mitochondria. Do you still remember the famous line for the function or role of a mitochondria? Among all other organelle, kanigid na siya ang mapaminti madumduman. Do you still remember the tagline or the function? Okay, very good, Lawrence. Yes, it's the powerhouse of the cell. So powerhouse. It's the organelle that is responsible for the generation or production of power, or in this case, energy. Okay, so before we go to the specific stages, let's first have a very short review. So I think this was given to you during your grade 8 together with the plant cells and animal cells. So of course, we have here an example of a animal cell, circular man siya. So this is an animal cell. So let's magnify the mitochondria, or a specific mitochondrion, isa lang. So, of course, just like your chloroplast, it has a protective outer membrane. And inside the mitochondria, you will also find the DNA. Then you have the inner membrane. So take note, sa inner membrane, this is the site or location for the ETC, electron transport chain, which is the third stage for our cellular respiration later on. And then we have the matrix, the space within the inner membrane, while this one is the site or the location for Krebs cycle or citric acid cycle, the second stage of cellular respiration. And then lastly, we have the cytoplasm. So cytoplasm is actually not part of the mitochondria anymore. It's actually the space inside the cell itself. So this is a fluid-like structure wherein this is the location or site for glycolysis, the first stage of um, of our cellular respiration. Okay, so please take note the important location for our cellular respiration. We have cytoplasm for the first stage, glycolysis, matrix for the second stage, Krebs cycle, and then the third, we have the inner membrane for the third stage, which is the ETC or the electron transport chain. So please take note of these locations. So just like what we did yesterday, what we will do is we will only focus on four specific details regarding the specific stages. So we have three stages, as I've said, glycolysis, Krebs, or also known as citric acid cycle. And then we have ETC or electron transfer chain. For each stage, we will focus on the goal. What's the primary, um, what do you call this? Goal or aspiration or kanang iyag yung ultimate outcome of that particular stage. Next is the location where it occurs specifically inside the cell or specifically inside the mitochondrion. And then we have the input, the ingredients, the raw materials. And then lastly, what are the substances produced for that specific stage? Now, please take note, there are actually two available links on the module. We have one that is the detailed version, and the other one we have the simplified version. So what we will do is we will watch the simplified version, focusing only on the general characteristic of the different stages. So let me first stop sharing and then transfer or shift my sharing to tab so that you can hear the presentation or the video. Okay, same thing. I will be turning off my camera so that it will I will minimize the lag from my end. So let's start.
This bird, like all living animals, has cells that carry out cellular respiration. During cellular respiration, organisms break down nutrients in order to produce energy in the form of ATP. Let's take a closer look to see how this happens. If we zoom in on one of this bird's cells, we can see the mitochondria, where the majority of the reactions involved in cellular respiration occur. Let's zoom in further on a single mitochondrium. Cellular respiration consists of four primary stages. These are glycolysis, the preparatory reaction, the citric acid cycle, and the electron transport chain. The first stage, glycolysis, occurs in the cytoplasm outside of the mitochondria. During glycolysis, enzymes break down glucose into two molecules of pyruvate. During this process, two ATP are produced, and NADH is released to be used in a later step of cellular respiration. Stage 2 is the preparatory reaction. During this stage, the pyruvates of glycolysis move into the mitochondria, where they are converted into acetyl-CoA. During this conversion process, more NADH is produced and carbon dioxide is released. In stage 3, the citric acid cycle, the remaining carbons from the initial glucose are oxidized, releasing carbon dioxide. NADH and FADH2 are also produced, in addition to 2 ATP molecules. Most ATP production occurs in stage 4, the electron transport chain, or ETC. In this stage, the NADH and FADH2 from the previous stages give up electrons to the chain. Energy is released and captured as the electrons move from a higher energy to a lower energy state using a series of proteins embedded in the membranes of the mitochondrion. Later, this energy will be used for the production of ATP, typically 32 to 34 per initial glucose. Oxygen is used by the ETC as a terminal electron acceptor. It then combines with hydrogen ions to produce water. If we add up all the ATP produced from just one glucose molecule, we can see that these reactions produce a total of 36 to 38 ATP.
Okay, so now you have watched the video. So why I moved this one? Because this particular image or portion of the video actually shows us the summary of the important components, important input and output, and relationship of the individual stages in the production of ATP. So take note, in this particular video or presentation, you will notice that the host or uh, the presenter actually said that there are four stages, but in our case, preparatory reaction is not considered as one of the stages, but instead, in our discussion, you'll focus only that glycolysis, citric acid, and ETC are are the three main stages of cellular respiration. Yes, preparatory reaction is there. It happens in as part of cellular respiration, but it's not considered, the textbook does not consider it as an actual stage. Okay? So let's now go back to our table to show the summary in terms of the goal, location, input, and output for each stage. Now, you will notice that glycolysis is the first stage. Now, what's the initial or the main substance that enters in this particular reaction? Unsa gid siya na substance? In the
Glucose.
form, okay, in the form of glucose. So what happens here for glycolysis is that your initial substance, glucose, is broken down or simplified into what we call as a pyruvate substance. So that's the main event or what happens primarily under glycolysis. What happens there is that glucose enters the cytoplasm, which is the location for this stage. And at that particular moment, your glucose is now being processed, being simplified into a pyruvate substance. So what happens in glycolysis is that, of course, your pyruvate is now the new form of your glucose. And then another important thing is that in this stage, you will notice that in this stage, we can actually produce a very small amount of ATP that is in the form of 2 ATP. So kanilang na stage, it already generated 2 ATP substances or 2 ATP molecules. Now, the output here is that, of course, I said gatong pyruvate and, of course, your 2 ATP molecules, which we will gather together and collect it as number of ATPs for the entire process. Now, for Krebs cycle, you will notice that here, sa atong presentation, instead of going directly to the Krebs cycle or the citric acid cycle, there is a preparatory stage. So this is actually taken as part of the citric acid. So what happens here is that from di ba, originally it's glycolysis, it was transformed into pyruvate. What happens in citric acid is that your pyruvate substance is now transformed again into another substance which is called acetyl-CoA. Okay, so that's the third appearance now of your glucose. Lahi na sa diyahang identity. So what happens here is that the captured energy from the chemical reaction produces a little bit of energy or ATP, just like your glycolysis. However, this process happens inside the mitochondria. So you will notice here sa atong picture, si glycolysis gawa siya sa mitochondria because it happens inside the cytoplasm pa. But when you start going to the second stage and onward, it's now happening inside your mitochondria. That's why it's now here. It's representing that it's now inside this structure, the orange structure, which is representing your mitochondria. Now, the input here is, of course, your acetyl-CoA from the preparatory stage. And what happens is that you also produce ATP, carbon dioxide, which is a byproduct or a waste product. Waste product because this is the gas that is being exhaled by the body. And then, of course, another important thing that we need to take note is that from glycolysis and from citric acid, there are substances called NADH. NADH. Now, NADH are actually substances that can actually be processed later on during the last stage, and these substances are actually potential form of ATP. Let me repeat that statement. From glycolysis and citric acid, you have the substances or these stages produces the substances NADH. These substances are actually potential form of ATP. So yes, glycolysis and citric acid produce a small amount of ATP, duha-duha lang, but they also provide the second stage with the substances that are potential forms of ATP. That's why in under the third stage, what happens here is that the stored energy in the form of NADH are generated or converted into ATP. Okay? So this time it's now happening inside the inner membrane of the mitochondria. So take note, as I've mentioned, the NADH, FADH2, and oxygen are actually the substances needed for the final stage. NADH and FADH2 are actually substances from the first two stages. Okay? And lastly, the most important thing is that in this stage, you produce actually, if you were paying attention during the presentation, the last stage actually generates a range of 32 to 34 number of ATP. So, looking back, si glycolysis, duha lang. Si citric acid, 2 ATP as well. But for ETC, this can generate up to 32 to 34 ATP. So my question now, which among the stage produce the most number of ATP? First, second, or third?
Third.
Third. But what made it possible, it's because the first and two stages actually provided the third stage the necessary substances it can use for the generation of more ATP. Do you get that point? It's actually the first and second stages that provided the necessary ingredients or substances that will be transformed on the final stage as more forms of ATP. Okay, the subdan. So that means in this stage, as as we have already established, it can generate an average of 32 to 34 ATP, depending on the efficiency of the production. And then, of course, the waste product, water, which is, of course, expelled by the body as a form of sweat. That's why when we generate some ATP, part na siya sa atong either sweat or urine because it's the byproduct of the production of more ATP under the final stage. Okay, so I hope that's clear to everyone. So let's now check our understanding. If we really understood the different stages, at the same time, the relationship between photosynthesis and cellular respiration. So I have here the chemical equation of cellular respiration. That's the top part. And below that is another chemical equation. This time it's representing photosynthesis. Now, looking at the chemical equation, what do you notice between the chemical equation for cellular respiration and photosynthesis? Are there similarities or are there differences?
Sa cellular respiration, sige, kailangan ang glucose siya, while sa photosynthesis kay glucose yan ginahimo siya.
Okay, very good. That's a very good observation. So you will notice if we focus on glucose or the placement of glucose in the chemical equation, according to Miles, under cellular respiration, glucose is considered as an input, an ingredient. Am I right, Miles? And then for photosynthesis, in contrast to that, the location or the placement of your uh, glucose C6H12 is considered as an output. So what can we conclude between the relationship of the cellular respiration and photosynthesis? Are they related or unrelated to one another?
Inversely related.
Okay, they are related. They actually are, the process are actually reverse or inverse of one another. You will notice that the input of one reaction is one process is actually the output of another. What we can establish from this relationship is that the product from cellular respiration are needed so that the process of photosynthesis will occur. Same thing, the product from photosynthesis are the ingredients so that cellular respiration will happen. So let us say theoretically, what do you think will happen if, let us say, plants stop car, um, producing glucose and stop producing oxygen? What do you think will happen to cellular respiration? Will it still happen or will still it?
No.
No. So if one process stops producing its products, then the other process will no longer cease to exist or will no longer occur in our ecosystem. So hand in hand, both of these processes are actually essential for the continuation of life here on Earth. Photosynthesis provides the glucose and oxygen, while cellular respiration provides the carbon dioxide and water needed for and vice versa. Okay? So please take note of that. Okay? So heads up everyone. Okay, before I so take note, um, as I've said, our module for this week is quite hectic, but I know that we can do it. And so for the third session this week, which is Wednesday, tomorrow, we will be having our essay writing. Okay, so the details will be posted on our class card. Okay, and also during session 3, you will be given the time to write down your essay. So what happens on session 3 is that the first few minutes, I will explain the the expectation for this essay or for this PT. At the same time, I will also explain the grading system, basis for the grading or evaluation of your work. And then, of course, how you will submit the work. The portal is already prepared for you. At the same time, the deadline when you will submit that. So that's for session 3. So again, the first for session 3, I will have few minutes for the discussion of the PT making, and then afterwards, probably 10 to 5. That will only take 5 to 10 minutes maximum. Then the remaining time will be given to you for the writing or drafting of your essay. Okay? While for session 4, that will be on Thursday, will be our longest number 1. The topic, of course, will be photosynthesis and cellular respiration. So very short lang siya na topic or coverage for our longest number 1. Okay, questions or clarifications, everyone, regarding our session for this afternoon? Again, you may rewatch the video later on during your most convenient time. Okay, now by concerns? Anyone? Wala? Okay, if there are no more concerns, let me allow me to use this few minutes. Okay, please take note. I have already um, sent out the PDF version of your report card via email. But so far, I only encountered one error, but the rest, they were successfully sent out. So please, I highly encourage you to remind your parents to check their emails so that they can see if they have already received the the PDF version. So far, I have also received mga confirmations, but a few lang ang nag-confirm na parents. Any other concerns? So report card, wala ba? Violent reaction regarding your grades? Are you satisfied or unsatisfied regarding your grades? So far, based on what I have observed, general trend lang ni siya sa inyong grades. Majority of you got a grade higher sa inyong previous quarter. So congratulations for that. But of course, it doesn't mean that we should settle on that. We always need to challenge ourselves to do better, because I know right now you can still give your best. But of course, sometimes we get distracted with our mga personal na mga challenges, but it doesn't mean that you can't do it. It's a matter of prioritizing. So please, if you need help or assistance, if you need me to communicate with your teachers, please do not hesitate. Or if you need me to schedule important um, kanang discussion or kanang conference with your teachers, you may also do that. Or if you want me to remind your teachers regarding a certain agreement ninyo, if ever you're shy to remind your teachers, you can channel that to me para ako na ang mag-remind sa inyong teacher. Or if you want, you can also ask me to schedule long test for you. Okay? Or kanang if you miss something, if you want to submit, I can also submit it on your behalf. Okay? So in short, secretary ko ninyo. So I don't mind on that. Basta, of course, just message me and I can do it for you. Ayaw lang po ng, sure, mag-long test ko din. A minute, diretso na dayon. Okay? So, because I also need to be kanang mindful of the time of your other teachers, because I also do not know if they have also other responsibilities other than the online class. Basta hindi na pa sila yung mga other responsibilities. Okay? So I hope, so far, I have not heard any feedback pa man sa inyong teachers, but please, if there is a concern that you think you cannot solve on your own, okay, please message me so that I can assist and help you. Okay? But of course, kung money na siya or matters of the heart, I cannot help you in that. Kana mga special friend na to diha, na mga na-cold na mga special friend, I cannot help you on that. Kana mga na-ghost, na-ghost, wala, dili man naka-ghost. Wala may mag-ghost sa 9H. Kay mga pretty man. Okay, so money and matters of the heart, I cannot help you, but anything academic or dili pud ka ng mga kanang maalaala mo kaya ng mga story ha kay I'm not a licensed sa tawa na licensed guidance counselor ko. So if I can manage it, I can do it. I will help you. Okay? Katawa kay si Miles pag ingon ako special friend. Lagi something special friend. 'Di ba? I don't know kung naka-relate si Miles or naka-relate si Miles para sa iyang friend. Okay. Nana man ta 'di ba bisan dili na to siya story, maka-relate ta para sa atong friend. Okay, anyway, so I hope all of us are in a good spirit, a high spirit, and good mood. So we're still starting the week, so I hope good things happen to us for this week. Take care and God bless everyone. See you tomorrow for our PT making. Take care and God bless. Bye-bye.
Goodbye,
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Bye,
teacher.
teacher.
Bye-bye.